Welcome back to Canic Air. Today's topic, well, Crosman. Crosman have made, over the years, many very popular and successful air pistols, mostly pump-up pneumatics or CO2 guns like this one. Or pump-up guns like the 1322. Some exotic things like the Crosman 600, which was a semi-automatic. Very clever mechanism. Very hard to keep working these days. But my favorite of all of them has been the Crosman Mark I. Mark I target. 22 caliber CO2 gun made from 1966 to the mid-1980s. Meant to resemble a Ruger Mark I target gun that was available in the 1960s at the time, the one with the tapered barrel and the very large prominent front sight. It was meant to look like that, remind people of that. But it also makes for a really fine air pistol, in my opinion. There was a Crosman Mark II. That was the 177 version. It also had a magnetic probe on the breech end of things to hold a BB. Normally you don't shoot BBs out of rifle barrel guns, but Crosman said it was okay. I've never tried one, so I wouldn't really know. But the Mark II, there was the Mark I was the 22 caliber version, and I like it. It hits hard, seems decently accurate, can snuff a pop can at pretty much any distance you like to go after it with. There were two versions of the guns over the years. This is the earlier one. It's actually the earliest of the earlier one because it's kind of hard to see now because this gun has been refinished in epoxy paint. But it actually says on the side here you have, on this side here, Crosman Mark I target. On this side you've got the address. On later guns that was swapped for some unknown reason. But the earlier version of the gun does have an adjustment here on the front. You unscrewed it to reduce the hammer pressure so less gas would get through and you could get more shots out of a cylinder, or you could screw it in for maximum power. Presumably you could tune it to just the right setting for whatever pellets you like to shoot. This one's been modified a wee bit, as probably a lot of them have over the years. I've got a little gold bead on the front sight. This is an epoxy finish that replaced probably a very shabby, original finish, which had a habit of flaking off. I'll show you one like that in a minute. And this has homemade rosewood-looking grips on it. I'm not sure what the actual wood is. And unfortunately, this one has a crack in it. And the reason for all this is I got this gun from my father, who had shot it for quite a number of years until it started leaking gas around the screw-in seal at the bottom, which also serves to pierce the CO2 cartridge. And as you might guess, that means the CO2 cartridge has to go in with the end of it sticking out, and you puncture that, and then it floods the base of the gun completely with CO2 until eventually you run out. CO2 is an amazing product for air guns, in that I always just assumed that you got a cylinder, it had gas in it, you pierced it, and you started out with a full cylinder, and it would slowly get weaker and weaker as you shot. That's not actually how it goes. CO2 guns, when you pierce them, they contain liquid. That liquid boils off essentially shot by shot, but the gas pressure stays exactly the same, at least according to whatever your ambient air pressure is and temperature. So, yeah, they're sort of self-regulating. I never knew that until somewhat recently, and realized just how brilliant CO2 was for air guns. Of course, it's also a greenhouse gas, so yeah, all right. Maybe PCP guns are the way of the future, and maybe we'll worry a bit more about shooting our CO2 guns. But yeah, this is a really nice gun. You've got the cocks here you cock the hammer before each shot. You load your pellet in the breech like this. You turn and pull it open, drop your pellet in, push forward, lock it down. And yet, as I said, you've got two power levels. There is a first click is a low power, another click is a high power. So in addition to the adjustment, you've also got two settings available to you at any time. When it's cocked, you can put the safety on. A very neat, very heavy gun. If you saw my earlier video on the Diana 15, this weighs as much as that entire air rifle. It's fairly hefty, balances well, holds on target quite nicely. There's a lot to like about it. And they have been sought after by people making modifications to them over the years. There's been people who put longer barrels on them, gone with bulk CO2 tanks that hang off the bottom, shoulder stocks, different sights, all kinds of trigger modifications, what have you. But I like them just kind of the way they are. This one here, though, my grip cracked. I had to make these grips because, as I said, I got the gun from my dad, who was left-handed, and he misplaced the original grips for the gun, and he made himself a set of wood ones that didn't suit me, and they were starting to come apart too. I made these ones, said homemade job, not my best effort, but I was eager to get the gun and shooting, and the left-handed grips weren't going to do it for me. So I'm going to have to make new grips. The trick is what I'm going to make them out of. Well, I'll figure that out in a minute. But you might wonder, if I love these guns so much, why don't I get more than one? Well, I have. I was at a gun shop up north, cottage country at one point, and I saw in their showcase familiar sight, a Crosman Mark I with its original grips on there and most of its original paint. I asked the fellow behind the counter what the story was on it, and he said he was selling it for parts because it didn't work. Only wanted $30 for it. So I thought, well, $30 is a pretty good deal for some extra parts, especially things like this very hard to find seal on here, and if my other one breaks, yeah, maybe it'd be good. Maybe I could even fix it and get it going again. Funny story was, it works perfectly. It holds gas tightly. There's even gas in it right now. That CO2 cartridge has been in there for months. So I don't know. All I know is it was well worth it for what I paid for it. It does have those huge flared grips on there, which I think that's probably a bit excessive. When I do make a set for my other one, I'm going to have to maybe... I like the thumb rest, but I might actually go a little bit small, definitely smaller than that one. As I say, parts are getting hard to find for these things. A friend of mine bought one at a flea market some years ago, and he was told by the fellow behind the, who was selling it, that well, it needed one of those the cap seal on the end there, otherwise it would work great. Then he discovered that you just can't find these parts here. They're really not available anymore. The only ones you're going to find are rating them off other guns that are broken. The gun that he bought is in fairly rough condition, as you can see, and it's also missing some screws. But for fun, I did actually try it. I transplanted some screws over here, transplanted the cap seal on there, and darn me if it doesn't actually shoot. Anyway, he gave up on eventually being able to get it going, so I ended up with it. At the moment, it's going to serve as a parts gun for my others, but who knows, maybe I will find an end seal for it and get it going again. So yes, the Crosman Mark I target, excellent gun. Is it a target pistol in the truest sense of the word? Well, not really. It does have adjustable sights for windage and elevation. You gotta like that. They're fairly crude, but not terrible. The trigger is actually adjustable. There is a tiny little Allen key nut in the bottom there. You can adjust it for the trigger engagement, and the trigger let-off on these guns is actually really quite good for what was an inexpensive air pistol. Bit of research says that they were about $28 they sold for in the U.S. when they were introduced in about well, I don't know when they were introduced, but in 1970 they were about $28. By 1974 they were $30. By 1977 they were $38. You see where this is going. I guess at some point Crosman figured they were getting a little too pricey to manufacture and sell at a competitive price, and they were discontinued. The basic the original model with the adjustment disappeared around 1980. The one without it was around till 1983, and the Mark II hung on for a few more years after that, but they all eventually disappeared. I'm not entirely sure what Crosman replaced them with, because there seems to be a gap in the sort of target pistol market until the 2240 came along, which is what my dad replaced this with. The 2240, of course, is still with us and sells quite well, and again, it's also a test bed for a lot of experimenters and modifications. But Mark I target, that's my favorite. Well, I've made some decisions on what to do about replacing the grips on my Crosman here. One of the trickier parts of working on this gun, as I remember from the last time that I made the grips, is how really difficult it is to inlet the underside of the grips with all the things that are going on under here. You've got the gas chamber here, so you have to cut that out on the grip. There's not a lot of supporting surfaces around here either. It's all been cut away. And this is a little bit tricky, and so is that. So that's only on this side of the gun. The other side is actually slightly worse, because that's the side that has the safety catch. So that requires inletting around here like that. If I was doing a lot of these grips, a whole series of them, I would probably write a pattern from my CNC router, but that's fairly time consuming as it is, and there's always a chance you have to do a couple of trial cuts to find out whether it works right or not. So I'm gonna just simply do it by the hard way for the instance. Now, what kind of wood to use? This was some sort of a exotic hardwood that I gave a shot at. Obviously a little thin here, so that's why it cracked and broke. Gluing it together was a temporary fix while I was using it on it's on a summer vacation. So what to use? Well, I've got some exotic woods here, but that's not big enough. That's Purple Heart. That's not going to work. This is either maybe similar to what I used here. I don't know. It could be. Yeah, it might be the same thing, but I don't have enough left, so that's not going to work. Walnut, you can't go wrong with that. Just not big enough. I've got some more walnut here and there. This is a really thick piece, but I've got plans for this one, so I'm going to save that for another day. I've got some maple kicking around. This board's not quite large enough either, but I've got some more in the garage, I think. Maple's really hard to work, though. Almost exhausted thinking about the last time I was making something out of maple. This is cherry, a piece that I picked up. This might be a candidate, though it's got fairly plain grain on it. Yeah, maybe. And of course there's more walnut. Fairly plain piece actually. But now what I did decide to use instead was this, which is described in the thing as honey locust. Never used that before either. And of course, spoiler alert, I've already made a start on it, so started cutting out. Yeah, can do a neater job of inletting this time. I promised myself I would do that, and it will get there. There's a lot of little channels and things. You got to cut that out, make sure it's properly aligned. This piece right here has to just kiss up against there. On this one, when I cut it out, cut it a little too deep, so there's a little bit of more of a gap there than I would like. That's probably one of the things that annoyed me most about them. But yeah, once I've got them properly shaped, so this one I've started on, this one not yet, but we'll see how it goes. After making a bit of a mess, I've cleaned up the bench a bit, and we now have two what they call scales or stocks to fit a Crosman Mark I. I use the parts gun here for all my cutting and filing and chiseling and sanding, because I want to make this, didn't mind getting this one a little more dirty. This is the one, of course, I'll be fitting it to, and it's a little more play there on this one. Just goes to show these guns do vary a bit in their castings from year to year. The hard part is inletting all these little contours and reliefs to make the grips fit tight. As I said, that one's got to be done a little bit more. It's harder work than you might think, because you're pretty much working blind. You just have to slowly remove material in the right direction until eventually they fit snug. Next step will be to work these down to close to the final contour, so I can position the screw holes through the grip there, and then finally make them tight and profile them to fit my hand, because right now they don't fit anybody's hand. But yeah, we're getting there. And just for reference, the tools I mostly used were various chisels, a corded Dremel type tool. This one's a Crosman. And I've also found these little diamond surfaced files work great for removing material in small amounts, just trying to profile things a bit. Kind of nice, kind of handy. Wish I'd had those 10 years ago. But yeah, getting there. Biggest tool in the toolbox is patience. If you figure you can knock off a job like this in an hour or two, yeah, it's slow going. It's not an easy one to do here, so, but anyway, have it done soon. Well, these are the grips for the Crosman Mark I target. I haven't got them screwed on, but yeah, I think I'll be happy with these. They're a bit thicker than the ones I took off. I do like the color. That's kind of nice. It turned out fairly well. A couple of coats of stain, a couple of coats of tung oil, and we've got grips that will do the job. But in the meantime, I thought it was a good time, probably prudent, to clean the gun up a bit. It's been a while since I've been inside it and serviced it, so just to, you know, check all the seals, lubricate everything, that kind of stuff. I'm trying to remember what the correct procedure is to take this thing apart now. What do I do first? still not releasing this. Right, because I think this has to come out. There we go. And there's the ball bearing detent for clicking it back and forth. That's always fun to put back in. Yeah, okay. It's a little bit grubby and dirty in there, but that's okay. I'll have to get onto that and get that out of there. Yeah, this is the hammer. So when you cock it forward and against the sear, and then when you fire, it'll come back like that under that spring pressure. Increasing, decreasing that pressure gives you a bit of adjustment in power. But the gun had 2 power levels anyway. There was always the first click on the sear, which some people argue is not really how it was meant to be fired, but people do it all the time. So anyway, I will continue stripping this down, find some more tools, and get it apart and give it a good clean and get it back together again. And we'll take it to the range and see how it performs after all these years. Well, before I take it to the range, I do have to make sure it's at least in working order and maybe chronograph it to see that it will work fine again. The Crosman Mark I is a bit unusual in that the CO2 cartridge goes in backwards to a lot of later guns, and the piercing is done on this insert part, which is why it's so darn hard to find replacement pieces. You just tighten it all the way in. Then everything starts when you break the seal. And that should do it. Got some pellets here. Seems appropriate to use Crosman pellets. Got some premieres here. Some old school stash of Super Pels. Pellet I never really cared much for, but they are period appropriate if you look at it that way. And I've got some RWS here as well, which are also quite good. Alright, let's see if she still works. Okay, let's give it a shot. Chronograph says 357. Sounds pretty good. One thing I do notice on the videos is the sound of the gun is a lot quieter on the recording than what it is in real life. Almost sounds like I got a silencer on these things, which I don't. And that one didn't read. This is more difficult aiming a pistol across the sensors of a conventional chronograph. This is a Canadian Crony, old one, but it still works great. Chronograph says 360. And the quicker you shoot a CO2 gun, the less time there is for the gas to boil off and get up to full pressure again. So there's not much a problem with single shot guns. Don't know what it was, a bounced back piece of cardboard there. 363 on that one. Single shot guns, it's not as much of a problem with the getting the gas back up to pressure again. It's when you have repeaters, you know, like the revolvers and things like that. If you shoot them quickly, you end up seeing your pressures drop off. 364. Seems to actually picking up a little bit of speed here and there. Alright, let's try an RWS pellet. See if it does any differently. .381. Yeah, they go a bit quicker, don't they? I don't reckon these are any lighter than the old Crosmans. I think they may just seal in the bore a little better. They're also not really old like the other ones either. I've had that pack of pellets around for, oh, late 80s. 387. So, yeah, that's the reason I still have those pellets is just haven't found any real reason to shoot them off. And now, as they get kind of vintage, then you don't want to. 389. Yeah, there's plenty of pellets over the years that I've used up my last, and then realized you can't get them anymore, and then I said, well, it's no big deal, you move on to something else. And then you get a bit nostalgic and you wish you'd kept a few of those old pellets around, so now I've got a few tins of pellets with just a few left in the bottom, and I never shoot them off. Something else again there too. What did I hit? 390. $389. Okay, she's working great. We'll take it to the range and see what we can do with it. So here I am back at the range with our single shot Crosman Mark I. First up, Crosman Premier Hollow Points. Again, the sight picture is a little bit vague when you're shooting with off the beanbag there. With the sight's a little too close to my eyes for comfort. I always find I shoot better the further I can stretch out, usually with a single hand. But this gun did pretty well. I still think I could do a bit better with it. First group here, not overly impressive, at least better than the one on the left. 38 millimeters is, yeah, I should be able to do better than that. This is the RWS Superdome. This group ended up being a little bit bigger than the one on the left there with the same pellet, but yeah, they shoot fairly consistently. The guns sounded pretty good. Yeah, those four are pretty good group there. And then, of course, I tried the Air Arms pellets, and at this point, I realized by the last shot here, which is shot number 44 on this cylinder, that the sound of it, you could clearly tell it was running out of gas. So I ended up calling it a day with the Crosman. Overall, this is an excellent gun. If you ever find one that made a little bit of TLC or is in otherwise working condition, scoop it up if you can. They don't make them like this anymore. These ones faded away in the 1980s, and Crosman didn't really replace it with anything quite in the same league. I know they had the Crosman Scannaker, which was a high-end match-grade pistol, which would have cost 10 times or more what this gun did. Not quite in the same category, and not nearly as much fun to take out plinking, slaying tin cans, or showing how good you are with a pistol one-handed. I do like the grips. They're a bit fatter than the original ones that replaced it. Hopefully they're stronger so they won't crack again. But again, it's a overall terrific gun. Nice, smooth trigger, very precise. And I say, we won't see their like ever again. Again, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon with something else fun.